Right, good evening, everybody. Welcome to members of the public, councillors and officers. And I just advise everybody that the meeting is being broadcast live. In the event of a fire alarm, everyone should immediately leave the building through the nearest door, which is probably that one there, and assemble in the car park near Clarence House. If you want to use the Wi-Fi, the Swindon free Wi-Fi password is Dream Shine Level. It's all lowercase and all one word. Dream Shine Level. First item is apologies for absence, and we've got an apology for absence from councillors Jason Mills and councillor Abdul Amin is deputising, and councillor Leon Grother, and I don't think we have a deputy there. Item 2, declarations of interest. I'd like to remind members that they should declare any known interest in any matter to be considered. Members should also make a declaration should it become apparent during the meeting that they have an interest in the matters being discussed. So I'd like to invite members to make any declarations at this time by stating which agenda item it relates to, whether it is a personal or prejudicial interest, and the nature of the interest. If it's a prejudicial interest, basically you should not be involved in the discussion, and you will need to leave the meeting at that point, and we'll deal with that issue if we come to it. But I suspect we won't have any issues tonight. Are there any members who have any declarations of interest at this time? No. Okay, thank you. Item 3 is the minutes, which is pages 5 to 14 of the pack. So we're receiving the minutes of the meetings held on the 20th of December 2024, and you just need to confirm the accuracy. Are there any comments or issues relating to the minutes? Okay, so on that basis, I'll take them as read and agreed. And there's no specific matters outstanding unless you wish to raise anything. So the minutes are being accepted as true and accurate record, and I'll sign them in due course. Item 4 is public question time. Public question time is limited to 15 minutes. In the event that we need more time, then I will ask committee members if they are prepared to allow more time for questions. But normally we don't have a problem with that. We've had a written public question from David Butler. I think Mr. Butler is present, so I'd like to invite Mr. Butler to the table to ask his question. Mr. Butler, could you just turn the microphone on by pressing the button there, and then you can be heard online as well as in the room.
Thank you, Chair. Members will be aware that there has been flooding in Rawdon from flows emanating from the reservoirs above the village, and that this is thought to be partly exacerbated by calcification and rooting below the village. Residents are understandably concerned that flow from springs above the village might increase as a result of climate change. Can councillors reassure residents that every effort is being made to deal with the present and future effects, and that appropriate funds from the council, sought from those responsible, or trusts and grants are being allocated or pursued to deal with the current and/or anticipated problem? As an aside, I did see some people working with theodolites down by the stream a couple of hours ago. I'm not quite sure what they were doing. And also that I had that there was, ironically, an Ofwat innovation fund offered, which has closed for this year. But those sort of funds might be available for climate change, and would suggest that might be worth considering.
Thank you, Mr. Butler. I think we were expecting Councillor Watts to be here, but he's not. I think there's a certain amount of detail involved there. So I wonder if you'd mind if we take that question away and give you a written answer, if that's okay. I would first of all, though, say that the issue of flooding is relevant not just to this committee, but also it's been covered with in the main overview and scrutiny committee, where we have had 2 meetings, extensive meetings so far with Thames Water around the issue around the town. And it may well be that that issue should be raised when we next have an opportunity to discuss further with Thames Water their work programme and what they're doing around the issues of flooding and so on around the town. So it is something, and I recognise the importance of it, and it is slightly ironic that there's a flooding issue in one of the highest parts of the town. It almost is counterintuitive, but it's a reality that the impact of infrastructure and climate change can actually be quite localised and have a quite severe impact in certain places.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Watts and I have been in touch on one occasion. We have been in touch on one occasion, and I think it would be worth investigating this in more detail, but members want to go into that. Yeah,
and I can assure you, having had conversations with Councillor Watts regarding the issue, it's something that he's dealing with really in a number of areas across the town where there have been flooding issues. So if he's made a commitment to you, I can assure you that he will get back to you on it. Thank you. Do we have any further members of the public who'd like to ask any questions? Thank you. Could you announce your name as well, please, so that the committee clerk can record it?
Good evening, thank you. My name is William Lambert. I'm from the Wiltshire Climate Alliance. We are working to launch a process of summits focusing on getting Wiltshire and Swindon to accelerate the progress to net zero. The summits will be held in Trowbridge at Wiltshire County Hall, and we would very much like Swindon Council to work with us as we're working with Wiltshire Council. How would be the best way to proceed with Swindon Council if you would like to be involved in this event?
I think Councillor Bushell might want to respond initially on that point.
Thank you. I was just going to suggest, so one of my roles is ambassador for Swindon, so if you can, I think it's up to you from separate duties and I'll possibly part of Stan. But yeah, if you can send something to me, I'll scribble down my email address, we can find it and we'll try and take it from there. Can't make any guarantees depending on the notice about resources, but absolutely let's have a conversation. So yeah, if
I understand that.
Like
thank you very much.
Yes, and I can assure you that the members of the committee, I think you'll probably find that quite a few of them will want to attend the summit in Trowbridge. I certainly will do my best to be there on the 2 days.
Thank you. That'd be really.
Thank you. Any further members of the public wanting to ask questions? No. Okay. Thank you very much. So we're going to take the agenda slightly out of the order that's been published. So firstly, I'd like to move next to the local plan update, which is on pages 33 to 76 of the pack. So I think we have Councillor Kevin Small, who's the Cabinet Member for Finance, and we've got Philip Bilo, who's our lead officer for planning policy, and coming to the table. And I think you're going to be giving us a presentation.
Yes.
Thank you. While Bill's just setting up, I'll just, as you would have seen on the cabinet agenda last night, the timetable for the local plan delivery was agreed, was on the agenda. And so what we've got Reg 18 coming up, which is our first sort of main first hurdle. And it's planned to have that this summer. And so what will happen is that I know most councils have had an opportunity to see some of the allocations in their one-to-one meetings. And what happens next is that we'll come to cabinet and before council for the agreement about public consultation. Once that's done, the final Reg 19 will be done, and it will then be sent for inspection in public, and then finally agreed and go to Secretary of State for approval. So, and that's for summer of 2026. Now, some of the people members who are longer in the trust around this table will remember that we did originally about 2 to 3 years ago get to a stage of Reg 18, but it was due to some amendments made on the night, it was then pulled and the process was started again. There's also been during that time 1 or 2 staffing changes, which has delayed some of the. We were hoping to get this consultation at the end of last year. Also, the fact that the changes to the new government and new requirements have also been a major factor in some of the changes. Can I just say that because of Swindon's progressive nature, over many years, the housing targets that were set by the government were only 200 more a year than what we were already planning to do. And so therefore, we had a reserve list which was able to cover a vast majority of that additional 200 a year. So it's something to be sensitive. We've always looked to be Swindon to be the expansion is one of our assets. And so therefore it wasn't a major burden for us to find those areas. Not like, say, for example, Wiltshire, we've had a large, they've happened to find new sites all over because of the fact that the vast increase, about 25% increase from the original numbers to what they've been given. So that's just a taste of what's happening here. To Phil, he'll do the presentation and I'll chip in there again.
Thank you, Councillor Swindon. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Yeah, I'm Philip Milo, the planning policy lead here at Swindon. So just wanted to give you an update on where we are with the local plan. First of all, we just want to say that we're at a relatively early stage in the local plan, and that the evidence that we are working on is largely, some of it's completed, but a lot of it is still emerging. So there is still plenty of opportunity to comment on what we're doing and to influence the direction and the content of both of the strategic and detailed policies. So we are at a fairly early stage. Yeah. So this slide shows the stages of any local plan. So stages 1 to 5 is really where we're at the moment, and we are working towards developing a draft plan, what we call Regulation 18 plan, which is scheduled to go to Cabinet in July and be consulted on public consultation in the summer this year. The National Planning Policy Framework was updated recently towards the end of last year. I just wanted to highlight a few things that came out of that. Firstly, the greater focus on demonstrating strategic cooperation with neighbouring authorities and infrastructure providers through the duty to cooperate. Secondly, a slight change in emphasis on affordable housing provision with greater opportunity for the council to consider policy approaches to meeting local housing needs through the policies of the local plan. Thirdly, inclusion of a vision-led approach to transport solutions at an earlier stage of plan making by developing a transport strategy. And lastly, more specifically, the requirement set out through the what's called the standard methodology for homes to be delivered in Swindon has been increased from 1,005 to 1,205 per annum. And I'll go into a bit more detail on that later on in the presentation. Also arising out of the recent changes has been sort of emphasis on the timetable of local plans. So at the moment, local authorities are being encouraged to adhere to a time frame which allows for the submission of the plan before the end of 2026. So last night, the local development scheme that it's called went to Cabinet and set out this timetable, which is summer regulation, summer this year regulation 18 consultation, spring next year for the regulation 19 consultation, and then after that the local plan gets submitted to the Secretary of State. So the date for that is autumn 26. So just in terms of plan direction, just a very sort of high level overview of where we think we're going with this plan. The urban, the focus very much on urban spatial strategy. So we want to make maximum use of town centre and brownfield sites and corridor growth. Obviously, it has to be pushed forward into the future. So we're looking at 2043 for the technical work and 2050 beyond for our vision. As mentioned before, the transport has to be a vision-based transport strategy now, which is encouraged in the NPPF. Zero carbon environment, obviously these are important themes that we need to bear in mind going forward, and there is some evidence base which is looking at zero carbon issues. Housing delivery, obviously that has to match the spatial strategy, so very much one of the challenges is how to deliver housing in the urban area, how to make it viable. On the economy, looking at circular economy, green economy, sustainable transport corridors, those kinds of things. Town centres, the big issue there is obviously the pullback of retail and the sort of reduced demand for actual physical retail space and the implications that has on the town centre. And lastly, natural environment, with a stronger focus on the green infrastructure strategy, which has come to this committee before, and other sort of green matters. Local plan structure, all local plans tend to have an element which is the vision, the strategic objectives, and they have the more local policies which cover the whole range of different topics. Then the area profiles, particularly for the town centre in this case, and then a bunch of delivery policies to make sure that the plan can be delivered and is viable to be delivered. It's really important that we align this plan with the Swindon plan, the corporate plan. So the missions, fairer, better, greener, they definitely need to feed into the what we call the strategic objectives, which at the moment we've got principles in development, climate stability, thriving regenerative Swindon, healthy lives, places for people, and transport and connectivity. So in terms of the hierarchy of plans, it's really important that we demonstrate that to the inspector when it eventually gets to the examination. In terms of a spatial strategy, what we're trying to do is, as far as possible, we're looking to resist peripheral development, focus intensifying existing centres, where possible regenerating existing housing areas, increase the amount of urban living and rationalising housing growth. Specifically for the town centre, there are two key areas that we see at the moment. The area to the north of the railway line around the Oasis, where we're looking at a lot of regeneration opportunities for new communities, new housing, and obviously the new leisure opportunities as well at the Oasis. And then south of the railway line, there's a lot that needs to be done, but in particular that sort of issue around the reducing demand for physical retail space needs to be considered, and we need to try and find ways in the local plan that we can encourage other uses to come into the town centre and to sit comfortably with the sort of pullback of the retail side of things. Other themes, so obviously the whole links to the office and business sector are important there, and also repairing frontages, thinking about tall buildings, how we deal with tall building strategy, the historic environment, and encouraging the right infrastructure to come into the town centre as well. So I just wanted to cover a bit about evidence base on housing. I mentioned the standard methodology that sets out our needs. So the figure is 24,100 new homes over the 20-year period of the plan. Our calculations suggest that there is approximately 17,000 homes already committed through planning permissions and strategic allocations. So the challenge in this plan is to find locations and sites for roughly 7,000 new homes in the plan period. We have to look after our gypsy community, and we've done some evidence on gypsies and travellers, and the demand that we need to provide for has been calculated at 35 new pitches and 19 new plots for travelling show persons. On employment and economy, on retail in particular, we're able to share the findings of retail in the comparison goods, which is the durable goods type sector. There's a negative 25,000 square metre demand. That's reflecting this need to allow other uses into the town centre to take up that 25,000 square metre reduction. And then on convenience goods, that's supermarkets, that kind of thing. There is a positive demand of roughly 5,000 square metres for that use. Obviously, on the environment, important for this committee, we've talked a bit about the importance of zero carbon, decarbonisation, renewable energy. These are really important themes that we need to build into the plan fully. We're working on evidence at the moment that is looking into these areas, and there are also important links to issues such as the viability of the plan as a whole. Open space, the open space assessment we have is over 10 years old now, so we're having to update that at the moment. Green infrastructure, mentioned that before. It's really important that we take account of the existing assets, the green and blue, the water bodies, that kind of thing. Making sure that we're not, where we allocate land for development, that it's not in conflict with important green infrastructure and blue infrastructure areas, and that the corridors of growth also are complementary to the green infrastructure strategy. Landscape character assessment. We are doing a more fine-grained landscape character assessment at the moment, which is on top of an initial assessment we did for the when we were looking at sort of site suitability. So we have consultants looking at that at the moment. Flood risk, referring to the question earlier, it's really important that we have the most up-to-date flood risk information available, and that our evidence base takes that into account. It so happens that a lot of new information is coming out at the moment on flooding from the Environment Agency and other areas. So that's quite an active area of evidence that we're working on at the moment. Water cycle study is another piece of work that we need to do for the local plan, which looks at the water supply issues and also issues around the quality and capacity of sewage treatment works, that kind of thing, which is particularly important at the moment in Swindon in that regard. Emerging policy approach, there are various ideas for headings under the climate change and carbon reduction, natural environment. So those are the sort of themes we're looking at for possible policy headings in the plan. On transport and infrastructure, every plan has to produce an infrastructure delivery plan. So that looked at all the categories of infrastructure: transport, education, health, emergency services, flood risk, green infrastructure, all those kinds of things. And we have consultants that are just kicking off at the moment, kicking off a project looking into that to produce an initial piece of work that will support the Regulation 18 version of the plan. On transport strategy, slight shift. The previous approach was more predict and provide. We're now, as I mentioned earlier, the NPPF is encouraging more vision-led transport strategy, and that's something that we're working on actively at the moment. Again, various important themes that we need to build out for the plan, including active travel, public transport, transport hubs, that kind of thing. And lastly, it's really important that obviously we can be quite ambitious with policies around zero carbon, biodiversity, all these kinds of things, but we need to make sure that there's a balance between sustainable development, which benefits the local community, and realistic returns for landowners and developers, such that development is commercially viable. So that's another piece of work that we are starting with consultants at the moment, and will ultimately determine the balance between viable development and these kind of green carbon type policies, which are seeking sort of aspirations in that area. I was asked to rattle through it quite quickly. I hope I haven't lasted too long. I'm not sure how many minutes it was, but thank you very much.
I think that's probably ideal for members because I'm sure they've read the paperwork in detail.
Yeah.
I'd like to invite members to ask any questions they may have. Councillor Dunn.
Thank you. With reference to those negative 25,000 square metres for retail, what's that against? What's our current baseline? Thank you.
I suppose it's the baseline would be against zero, I would say, in the sense that do nothing. If it was zero, then you wouldn't be actively planning for new retail space. But if it's a negative figure, it means that we can
looking to reallocate.
We can let go of some retail space for other uses.
What I mean is, what would the figure be for currently for the total Swindon commercial goods retail floor space?
I don't have that figure on me at the moment. Sorry.
Can we see if we can
try and get that?
Yeah, that'd be quite useful to know what the reduction is against what the base is.
Absolutely, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Chandler.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you both for the report. So I have a couple of questions. I'm looking in both directions now. You can take your fancy. So the first one is, in what ways are we going to consult with, allow residents to give feedback on the Reg 18, specifically in relation to site allocations and spatial strategy?
I think my should have 3 at a time.
Oh. Can you switch you?
I'd
referred to the document we published, I think, last summer on when we had a consultation on how we consult and then a final consultation document. And so that it is quite comprehensive. It takes into format the fact that there will be, we use a lot more the modern technology in social media and stuff like that. So there are a wide range of opportunities will be taken on board in the consultation process.
Okay, I have a slight ulterior motive for bringing it up, because as you know, there's technical development on the edges of my ward. I'm just conscious that digital communication is relatively easy, cheap, if not free for the council. Without what are we going to be doing further and above for rural communities or places where people really need to see those plans in place?
I would suggest that if you want to comprehend it and you look at the document that's already been approved on the consultation, and I think I've got a feeling, Jake, it actually came to full council for approval as well, but I'm not 100% on that one. But to reassure you, the modern technologies, like you said, electronic versions and everything else are all in there. It's a modern approach, but at the same time also ensuring for Luddites like me that there are opportunities that contribute in other ways.
Okay, thank you. How does the council plan to address the need for an increased emphasis with neighbouring councils? I'm conscious we have over the years had a number of developments, particularly from Wiltshire on the edges of Swindon, to all intents and purposes. They are in Swindon, just not within our footprint. What are we going to do to improve that relationship?
I think initially, I mean, it's to talk and try and make sure. I mean, I think it's more of us talking to them over their plans, because normally it's them affecting our edges, their edges affecting us, and us affecting them. But also there will be some issues. If you look at the existing housing development, includes the Eastern Villages, which is right on our border with Oxfordshire, so therefore ensuring that we have got Oxfordshire in the sense talk to Oxfordshire is just as important like that bit as it is for Wiltshire to be talking to us. We made it clear last time that we wanted to engage with them, and I know that there has been talk in the past with several developers who are on the edge, and I'm not going to name any particular developer in a public meeting, but whether or not we should look to some of the councils which have, when they've been looking at the still on 106 side of the development, whether or not there shouldn't be cross-border distribution because of the effect it has on the two authorities.
Well, in terms of getting that, you definitely have my support.
Thank you, Jake.
Final question, just on the strategic risk assessment, is that already being completed now, or does it need to be completed ahead of the plan coming into effect? And how long do you anticipate that taking?
It's work in progress. As I said, we've got new flood information that we need to take into account, which will be supporting the Reg 18 version of the plan.
Okay, and how much of that work is being done by the borough itself?
Well, we've got consultants, specialist consultants supporting that. We're working with specialist consultants on that work.
Okay. That's all for now, Jeff. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chandler. Councillor Min.
Thank you. Just on the retail floor space needs, just wanted to understand a bit more, how do you actually measure the needs and demands? Do you actually take into consideration what's actually available as we speak? I mean, what's already available, which are abandoned? I mean, are these also taking into consideration?
Yeah, I mean, the retail work was done by specialist retail consultants. They do, as part of the work, there's a survey of shoppers that is behind the work. They're also looking at trends, retail trends, spending trends, looking at the internet, the proportion spent on the internet, that kind of thing. So it all feeds into this final figure, which is suggesting that there's no positive demand and negative demand.
Client was also asking, I think you mentioned about the housing policy in terms of the allocation between affordable and private. I don't think you actually mentioned. It's up to the council now to allocate what percentage we feel that should be allocated affordable or social and what facility.
Yeah, it's up to us to propose to the council what we think is appropriate, based on the evidence that we've got.
And do we have anything based on the evidence? What is the evidence have we got?
I think that's something for future meetings, and at the moment we've sort of said what we're able to say at the moment, but we'll probably come back to that subject at a later stage.
Thank you.
Any other members to Councillor Barry?
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for the demonstration. So I'm just thinking a few things. We're still in a very uncertain situation. So we've got the new NPPF and we've got the future home standard, but we're still waiting for these national development management policies. So we don't really know what we're going to be presented with. And this is all supposed to be going out to consultation in the summer, which is not very long. So what do you think about this situation?
Yeah, the Levelling Up and Regeneration Act hasn't been sort of fully detailed, which talked about development management policies and the whole speeding up of the local plan process. So that's something which we're expecting to see more details in the future on. So yes, we are operating in the context of some uncertainty, but I don't think I've ever not worked in the context of uncertainty of my career. Yeah.
Okay. So
Chair, just to answer that, there will be one or two items which won't be ready by the time Reg 18, and you'll be working on between Reg 18 and Reg 19. That's standard practice, and this could be one of the elements, but because things will change, or the rules will change between 18 and 19, then that's when it will change.
okay.
Yeah, if I could come in there first, Councillor Barry, that was one of the questions that I had, was relating to the National Development Management Policies. Obviously, they're not known yet. It would be useful, I think, for us to understand what our ambition is in terms of what we might be permitted to require. For example, air source heat pumps, solar battery, household batteries, charging infrastructure, insulation, rain capture, and so on and so forth. That if we don't have our own ambition, it's very difficult to see us actually getting to where we might need to be. So we might find that the actual framework that's agreed might actually be more enabling than we expect, which would be great. But on the other hand, we might have to temper some of our expectations. Is that something that you would be looking for this committee to input to, in terms of what we would like to see in terms of the requirements under the that would go alongside the National Development Management Policies?
Yeah, I mean, we've got the opportunity to write those policies ourselves. So, as I said earlier, they have to be viable. But yes, I'd say yes, at the moment there is that opportunity.
Excellent, thank you.
Sure, and the other thing, just to add on, is some of the issues which you just raised, again, will be some stuff which actually don't actually fall within inside the local plan bit. They're more development control element. We're going to build 1,200 houses a year, and this is where they're going to be built. How they're going to the next thing about whether or not the heat pump, solar panels and all that, the other stuff, is something which is if I would say sometimes a sub policy rather than the main policy. So that, in that case, it doesn't delay the process of the local plans.
Thank you, Councillor Small. Councillor Barry, sorry, I interrupted, but that was quite relevant.
That's fine. I was, just talking about this uncertainty that we're faced with. So the future home standard, the houses under the future home standard, they're supposed to be like net zero ready. That's what government says. So as the grid decarbonises, the houses become net zero. Yeah,
Mhm.
so just to confirm, I mean, that means no more gas boilers, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm not an expert in this area, so I wouldn't want to comment specifically on what is and isn't allowed in the future, but that's the direction it's going in, yeah, I understand.
Okay, that's good news. And there was another thing, so the government are very keen on district heating. They just, in fact, a couple of months ago, they just reiterated that district heating is something they really like. I mean, is this something that we would be considering in our local plan for some areas?
If there's sufficient evidence, we can look at it and consider how it relates to the local plan. But so we're not, you know, it's a local plan which is looking at policies related to development. It's not a plan for energy as such, you know, in that sense.
Okay.
Chair, can I just to add to that, I mean, Swindon did have many years ago in the 60s district heating even in its council estates. I just referred to the modern one. If you look at the old Herriard, the modern secondary school site as it was many years ago, the far corner there was a large building there, and that was the area pumping station for the heating system.
Mm-hmm.
And we were always used to say, Chair, because it also done in the school, that we were the only local authority that had a football pitch with under soil heating. Because the pump used to run from the pumping house through to the school underneath the main football pitch. But yeah, so I mean, it's something that has been used in this borough before. But again, it's something for the next stage of it, about what the houses are going to look like, or what the accommodation is going to look like, rather than what are the numbers.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, well, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I just had a couple of additional questions. The other members have asked some of the points, but one of them is with respect to the requirement for gypsy and traveller sites. To what extent does the existing site at the Firs constitute part of that 35, or is the 35 in addition, which suggests that we would need to look for an additional site or sites?
The figures I've shown are additional needs, so it's on top of the existing provision. Even
though the Firs is not currently being used, so you could say the Firs actually provide 0 sites at the moment because it's not actually being used.
It's a transit site, not a permanent site, right. So it would have to be reclassified to be counted within the numbers.
Yeah.
But we were only talking about this yesterday. So we were looking at the various site options, and one thing that I am determined about, we failed to do that last time. The plan was brought forward, and this time there will be sites identified for the travellers and gypsy residents to make sure they have those sites available. But we've still got some work to do on it, but initial sites have been now identified. I can't share them with you, of course, Chair. I'm happy to check in private if you wish to.
Thank you, Councillor Small. And one of the other issues that, I mean, I happen to be on planning, and I declare that as an interest. And one of the things that I think as a member of the planning committee, what we see very often in terms of some of the conversions that go on is an inadequate focus on the look of, for example, bin stalls. Bins, for example, are almost like an afterthought when it comes to some developers in terms of what they're looking to provide in terms of conversions on property, and it basically looks rubbish. So would we be able to incorporate in our requirements in terms of this planning policy framework some requirements that we actually have better control over how the bin stores are designed and shown? Because sometimes literally the space is just shown as a series of places for a load of bins to be installed, whereas sometimes a little bit of pre-planning, it might be possible to have them screened so that the actual site looks better, and it looks better for residents generally.
I would say that's a very detailed matter for a policy document that we're preparing, and it's probably, in my view, I'm not sure others agree, but in my view, it's more of a development management issue.
Okay, thank you. Something we have to take up elsewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So if members don't have it, oh, sorry, Tom, I didn't see you.
Particularly on the transport strategy section, I'm pleased to see the change from the predict and provide to decide and provide. I think that's a really positive step, and it's important that we are, as it notes there, having a vision-led approach to it. My interest there is in wards such as mine, where it's particularly old ward, effectively. It's older roads, it's older housing estates where a lot of active travel has never been planned into the area. What is the intention with the strategy here as to how we can effectively manage those sort of areas to implement better solutions, whilst acknowledging the fact that a lot of those areas are a lot of residents rely on their cars and make a use of their cars, and that we need to be able to provide those additional travel services and travel options alongside that as well. And how do we, in practicality, fit that into wards such as that, where, as I say, older and sometimes smaller roads can make that difficult?
I mean, we're still at a very early stage in the transport strategy, so I don't have any sort of emerging findings to share, but I would say that often those types of locations are quite central, and often they do have, they're well located, aren't they? Often with the town centre and facilities in the town centre. So I would say that would be a positive sort of aspect of those kinds of communities, to proximity to the facilities that already exist.
Yeah, I mean, so my ward is St Margaret, which is fairly far to the east of Swindon. It's something that I'm aware of in the local area, that we need to provide that better provision to make it safer for people travelling things. And I appreciate your point that that will emerge with further details. But yeah, my main interest is to make sure that we're putting good thought into that. I think it's something that we've done fairly well in some of the newer build developments at times to get included at the design stage. But it's important that we can revisit existing areas of the town as well to be able to provide that to make sure there's that equality of offer across the town.
We'll look into that.
Thank you.
Just to follow up on that, the plan has connectivity corridors. And I think I'm sharing with members when the debriefing. And those connectivity corridors are also then the basis for some of the transport stuff. The transport plans that we're doing are not the local transport plan. So in the sense, it's not about looking, using my own Robbourne, how do I get Robbourne transport for Robbourne? It's how can you look at, say, if you were doing to the west of Robbourne and it was coming, or to the north, it was coming through Robbourne, how to then connect in the new transport opportunities. But it's not a transport plan for existing Swindon. It's the benefits that it can knock on to the existing Swindon, but it's about how you create those transport connectivities for the expansion or the new developments, which in the sense of 1,200 houses a year we're going to be looking for, residential properties we're going to develop a year, how that connects in and how you provide that transport links, and it's through those corridors. And I know one of them, because it connects with the eastern villages, will be the one that would then link in, that your communities would link into, and the transport opportunities will be provided for the eastern villages.
Thank you.
I think we've probably exhausted the members' questions. I don't know whether you have anything else you wish to add, Bill or Councillor Small.
I think a lot of the points the members made, I think, are very, very valid when it comes to the finer detail about what the future looks of should we say, residential property within Swindon. And I know that my own response on behalf of the Labour group to the previous administration's local Reg 18 proposals went into some of those details. I mean, I've got I'm sure all politicians would support me on this one. Like I'd support the Dutch, where they have a certain height for letterboxes, and also that all flats should have outside letterbox for posting. That's something I would determine to make sure we try to adapt. But it is in a sense, the next plan down, in the sense of the design plans and all that, which comes with development control. But I think they are very important, because once you've got those numbers, a lot of things like the council and the Barry Quinn that yourself picked up, Chair, are elements that need to be included then about how we want our residential accommodation to look and how it should be supported as it goes forward.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Small. I'm encouraged by what you say, because I think it's important that we try to make our town look as the best we can. And, it's something that's better to build it in as we go, rather than try and fix it when it's already been damaged. Councillor Mulberry.
Yeah, just talking about the order you do things in, regulation as it were. So when London was expanding, London expanded along the railway lines and along the bus routes or horse bus routes. They went in first.
Yeah.
But we seem now, it seems that you sort of put in the development and then think, oh, how are we going to join it up? So I think, we ought to be doing it the other way, really, and not putting in developments until we've got public transport for them.
I wouldn't disagree with the principle. I've been to parts of Spain where they've got you've got street lights, you've got pavements, you've got roads, but you've got no buildings, because everything's in bar the buildings. And I come back 10 years later and all the buildings are there. So yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that principle about the supporting infrastructure. Go back to the London issue. I think that it was a lot easier in the 18th and 19th century to do that, because most of it was greenfields. And to put that infrastructure in place now wouldn't be possible. I mean, I'd love to have a railway solution to the Eastern Villages. I'd love to have, the Purton line going and giving us the West Swindon opportunities as well. So all those would be there, but it's nothing that we can control as a borough council. As part of the development, it would then take a big take value from government and from the railways to achieve that. But to put your point about having the transport links here, that's what I think what we jokingly called the amputated octopus part of our proposal is. I think the five prods or 6 areas, they are where the links will be, the corridors, and that's where. So you've identified, I would say the routes, but you understand the principle I'm saying. Identify the corridors about where that new developments are. So therefore, then you have got, shall we say, a mouse and two railway lines there, which you then can build up and around.
Yeah. It needs to be as much a web as a octopus, doesn't it?
It does, yes. I think at the moment it's doing the outer strands and then joining them up. Yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Manor.
Thank you for that. I think there are local authorities that will build the infrastructure first and then say developers now come and develop. It depends on how the authorities want to spend the money. I worked in Bristol, we built the Avon Ring Road without any developers being there, but since then it's all been developed. I worked in Norwich, we built a road near the football ground, Carrow Road. We built the road and then said to the developers, come and develop it. So it is possible, it's the investment that we have to look at making. Thank you.
And it is about, as you know, Chair, we've the Whittlestone has been a lot of infrastructure led by the forest. Again, a lot of that was our land, so therefore there's a return to be made on that in some time. Most of the stuff that's being built or will be identified land, they're nothing to do with Swindon Borough Council, they're all private land, so therefore you need the private sector investment because they're the ones who are going to be making the contribution. And when money is short, as we know, local government money is short all the way around, you cannot, those ideal opportunities of maybe putting in the infrastructure first as a shall we say, as an ideal opportunity, we haven't got the financial resources to do that.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Small. Thank you, Philip, and thank you, members.
Thank you, Chair.
So I think we, at this point, we note the presentation. I think it's something that we could take on board as it develops and hopefully contribute to from a Builder Green Swindon perspective.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, thank you. So I'll now move on to, no problem. Yeah, thank you.
After public gallery's gone now.
They all came to listen to you. So I'd like to move to item 5 now, which is the item progress and objectives on improving sustainability and environmental improvements on pages 15 to 32 of the papers. I'd like to invite Councillor Janine Howard, who's the Cabinet Member for Housing, and Luke Wheeler, who's the Asset Manager, to come to the table and give the presentation, please. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, with the asset management plan we did the other week, this is also feeding from that. We have done some retrofitting in Swindon, and obviously Queen's Drive was built to a certain standard of being environmentally sustainable. We've done some in Stratton, and we're currently in the middle of doing 114 properties in Park South. But a lot of our properties are not anywhere near where they should be, and this is where the investment within the asset management plans come in. So Luke will give you the presentation, and then any questions, feel free.
Members, or are we waiting for the presentation?
Just joining, sorry.
No problem.
No, not joined yet.
Oh, no, no.
Share the screen. Hi everyone, I'm Luke Wheeler. I'm the Asset Manager of Swindon Borough Council, so I'm based in housing or safe and stronger communities, and I look after just under 10,500 properties of mixed dwellings and roughly 650 blocks. So I'm going to report on the progress and objectives on improving sustainability and the environmental improvements. It's a very short slide showing in reality a lot of information. You need to deal with PowerPoint. I think it's the best way to have a record of it. But further review, and hopefully a lot of information will be unpacked. The questions at the end. So the council's recently adopted a new asset management strategy for the period 2025 to 2030, marking a significant step forward in its approach to managing its property portfolio. The aim of the strategy is to provide a structured framework which enable the council to make informed decisions about our assets, ensuring they remain fit for purpose and contributing to a sustainable future. And I'm not sure anyone's read the draft strategy. It's 90 pages, it's obviously public available, and it's ambitious, but I think it is feasible. But it's very easy to write a plan which you can meet. The trick is to write a plan which you're going to have to be brave and make the right decisions over a long period to achieve. Now, the asset management strategy recognises a critical area for improvement, the environmental performance of our existing housing stock. To address this, the strategy specifically highlighted the necessity to develop a retrofit and net zero carbon strategy. So the view was it's such a fundamental and important element that should not just be included within the wider asset management strategy. It should actually be its own individual strategy with its own milestones, KPIs to go forward. The aim is to identify and implement solutions to upgrade the energy efficiency of existing homes,
reducing carbon emissions and ultimately contributing to a net zero carbon footprint. The need for a retrofit and net zero strategy was identified as part of the Green Swindon plan, with the initial date of September last year to form a draft housing decarb strategy. We took a strategic view not to do this at this time because it was important that we ensure the asset management strategy and the associated cost plan was approved first, because obviously the cost plan is essential to any work that we undertake to go forward. I lost the page. Sorry. We are now in a position where we are finalising the contract award to a consultant to work with SBC to form this strategy, but reviewing the options to see if we can undertake the formation of the strategy using our in-house resources. And I think following this, we've actually now made the decision we will be using our in-house resources to form the strategy, because we do believe we have the skill set internally. We may buy in certain skill sets, really particular pilot projects done to inform the strategy further. But we also have identified the need for a further dedicated strategy, which leans into thermal efficiency measures being introduced to our housing stock. And those two other ones are strategy dedicated to the railway village and a strategy dedicated to the 6 high-rise blocks, which essentially further consideration. The asset management strategy identified that the 6 high-rise blocks and the heritage of the properties located in the railway village require respective dedicated investment plans and strategies to ensure the appropriate actions are implemented over the lifetime of the strategy. These actions will include that appropriate targets are identified and met in respect to improving thermal efficiency. The above sets out the strategy we aim to form to allow us to move forward with a strategic vision with deliverable milestones, but we also have a number of active work programs and agreed targets identified related to environmental improvements. So I'm just going to come on to some short programs now, really just to show that even though we've got the asset management strategy and the associated cost plan, and we identified the need for a net zero decarbonisation strategy and 2 further strategies which will aid in the decarb, we are not waiting before the decarb strategies will become live, because obviously that will entail full tenant consultation, consulting all internal and external stakeholders. We have a number of programs. So the UPVC window and doors renewal program, it commenced in 2024. It's a 3-year program. I think it was 8 million, with an initial target of 70 renewals per year. And this target is being reviewed due to issues encountered with the delivery of the works. I've now agreed with our operations colleagues a new milestones. So the contract will still be hitting the targets by the end of the 3rd year, which is the original plan. It's just the transition and the smoothing of the numbers. It's going to be ramping up significantly and then leveling out to go forward, because there was certain issues with the performance of the contractor, which really made the contract underperform. Gas central heating renewal program. It's an active 5-year contract. I believe that this is 8.5 million. The initial target is 250 renewals per year. And this, we've obviously had to take an informed decision where we aim our renewals to. So we still have an issue of several properties in our stock having back boilers, because a stock historically they've been turning these down, and we're really trying to make now progress on removing these from our stock. And also there is a lot of our stock have these ideal classic boilers in, which are great, but they are well beyond their life cycle now, with parts becoming obsolete. So that's another informing factor. Roof replacement program, a 5-year program, 7.5 million. These obviously rounded up, or rounded figures. Roof replacement schemes with inclusion of solar panels for properties with 3 bedrooms or more. Initial target of approximately 230 renewals per year, and we on target month on month that we hope to hit that. Currently reviewing which properties benefit from solar panels. The view was taken initially to include them with 3-bedroom properties or more, because that would obviously be the big number of people benefiting from the solar panels inclusion in the contract, but the prices of the panels are significant. To put it in some perspective, you are talking now at £80,000 to renew a roof. And that's really where we are in it. So by including more panels, we are actually doing less roofs overall. So I think we have to really take some informed decision where these roof renewals go. We have on board a part of software called Power Market, where we can look at Swindon from above. It uses a Google Maps type setup, and it will show you the EPC of the property. And based on the orientation and the type of metrics you've into the program, i.e. what solar panels and what kilowatt, it will give us the payback year on each property's roof, show it in a green, amber and red. And that's something we're looking into. Obviously, we've got to be aware that where we fit them 3-bedroom properties or more, and then we make a decision, which would not be my decision, it would be a cabinet decision in the future. If we do decide to remove 3 bedrooms, then I think there's a lot of tenants could be rightfully a bit put out that they can see neighbours down the road have already benefited from the solar panels, and they haven't. So at the moment, we are continuing with the solar panels in 3 bedrooms, but it is under review. And then it's just a little one, really, like Winseeds with an external wall insulation, as we all know. The way Swindon grew post-war, there's a lot of unskilled labour about, so a high percentage of our stock are system builds, non-traditional properties, and they all have intrinsic issues. A lot of our properties were classified as defective in the 1982 Housing Act, so we have got some issues with properties that we really now have to encapsulate, and we're doing a small project in Winseeds, followed by the British Steel properties in Pinehurst. We did a big project on this several years ago, but through issues with certain tenants who refused to work through ill health, because it's quite an upheaval doing external ventilation, and including some more properties we purchased since that, we now feel that we really have to finish off that area because they are really poorly performing. If you think the top floor of those properties is just essentially a sheet of steel and plasterboard. When they are built, they would have had some hanging insulation. In reality, that has perished and fallen by then, so they are really poorly performing. And it's something that, as a priority, we are going forward. And unfortunately, also still waiting for a procurement allocation, but they are moving forward. And the Railway Village strategy is a strategy I might be given a date for. I need to devise one. We've obviously done a lot in the background. I think there was probably another. So the initial target is a summer autumn traveller. Although we've already onboarded a consultant who's tasked with gaining listed builder consent to replace the windows, roofs and install mechanical ventilation through the village, as well as advising further energy efficiency measures. We have tried to do several pilot over the last 18 months in the other Railway Village, including pilot secondary glazing. We've gained listed builder consent to put in mechanical ventilation, but we do need a whole house approach at the Railway Village because obviously it's a key asset and it has been underinvested historically quite significantly. There's a perfect storm really of the financial climate, plus we have to now really invest the best we can, use all the data we can, but the option of doing nothing at the Railway Village has now gone. And the last one is the Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund. You've probably read about this in the national press. It is a very well publicised fund. And it is 114 Unity build properties. Unity is a type of non-standard build. In Park South are benefiting from external wall insulation and solar panels as part of Fabric First Whole House approach. And anyone involved in retrofitting will know Fabric First Whole House approach because that is the big thing, particularly when you talk about single individual measures like heat pumps, so to speak. And the idea is this will improve EPCs to seal better. And on top of these, we are installing UPVs double window to get a long-lasting, efficient homes. But I think this comes to the crux of the matter here with what we put into what we get out and what we can feasibly do. For instance, 114 properties we're investing. That's costing the best part of £6 million. because this is where this is the world we are now, where these old system build properties, where the best part of 50% of our stock are these type of properties. Can we replicate this investment over all our stock? No, we simply can't. Simply money is not there, and if the money is there, there is literally haven't got resources. If the resources are there, then time, we haven't got the time to do it, whether we want to do it. So it's important that net zero strategy looks at all the information you can, including consultations, as I said, with the tenants, and make informed decisions of where we spend the money, how we spend the money, and how we prioritise the justification of investing going forward. And hopefully that was a very short presentation. I'm happy to take any questions.
Members, council budget?
Thank you. Up to you.
I think you can keep it on as long as once one goes green, we have to turn one on.
Right, okay.
Yes, yeah, I had a number of questions. So having worked in the retrofit industry myself in the past, I'm pleased to see first off that we are taking such an active interest in retrofitting our housing stock and investing so heavily in it. I think this is a really crucial area for us to focus on as council, frankly. Very pleased to hear, especially with the Railway Village, about the whole house approach that's being taken, especially with properties such as that. That's a really, again, really important way of going about it. I had some questions which are in no particular order, if that's all right. I'll start from the bottom of the list, I say. With the Railway Village, you mentioned the whole house approach. You mentioned obviously listed building, things like replacement of windows there. That obviously historically has always been a bit of a stumbling block for councils due to heritage concerns about replacement of single glazing and things like that. There are a lot of new products on the market now for that, such as often you'll hear of stories of listed buildings not being able to go double glazed or triple glazed or anything. And UPVC windows and all of that, but there are products, for example, with vacuum glazing, which has the outward appearance of a single glaze, but the thermal performance of a double glaze, which is becoming very popular. I'm aware within our sort of local region, Bath, for example, we have a massive stock of
example up.
Bath have a huge stock of heritage buildings like that, and I've spoken with their council's heritage offices in the past and things have approved that type of product. So I'd be interested to hear what work we're doing in terms of looking at those types of products that are available on the market now that maybe haven't been in the past, that are really available for heritage buildings especially, and what we're doing to work with other neighbouring authorities such as Bath to learn from some of the things they've done in those areas too.
Okay, fantastic. Great. Thank you. It's my favourite topic. So
mine too.
Please tell me if this goes on past midnight, so this answer.
That's fine. I've got way more questions as well after that.
So
I think you might have to take it offline.
So the first thing I did when because before I was an asset manager, I was a surveyor with the council, and Railway Village was my area, so I could see firsthand where we kicked the can down the road with it, and there was no short wins left at Railway Village, so it had to be a whole house approach.
Yep.
So I'm not sure if you're all familiar with Past 2035. So the first thing I did, I done a full Past 2035 retrofit assessment there, and I also contacted the head of climate change adaptation from Historic England, and met them on site several times to have a look around. And you are right, the excuse is given, it's listed, we can't do anything. That is not true. As you rightly said, it's how you do it. There's listed buildings with solar panels, there's listed buildings with EWI, and it's funny you mention the Bath, because how the council works, myself, I work under Andrew and Andrew also himself works under Councillor Howard. I work in the housing side, and operations are our internal delivery body, and they procure, they organise the internal direct labour force, also they procure, we ask to procure, and I sent them, actually in my request for service, which I designed, which is the way we formally instruct them, I included the work that they've done in Bath, because particularly a lot of the crescents in Bath, and so we plan to, so the plan is to replace the sash and casement windows like for like with double glazing. We have when within the past 2035, we also looked at thermal bead lime plaster. So it's a lime plaster internally with thermal bead in there, because one issue we've got with Railway Village, it's got modern plaster and modern mortar. We're sweating the properties. And when I joined the council, I could see there's a lot of condensation in those properties, and people were suggesting we tank them, we waterproof them. It's moisture trying to get out, not moisture trying to get in. So it was a lack of really technical understanding. So we looked at thermal bead plaster, we've looked at a lot of issues, and we piloted. So we piloted secondary glazing, wasn't great. It was really just a proof of concept that I knew wasn't going to work, because obviously we still got the whole frame, the body is one big thermal loss and thermal bridge essentially. So the plan is now, the outline plan is now to go with 4 double glazing in sash windows, and I do believe we will be successful. This is why we got a consultant in, because previously, which almost sounds, when we have went for planning ourselves, we've been turned down by our own council. So when we went for the Railway Village, because we probably didn't have, the people doing it did not have the intrinsic skill set based on the heritage list, as you advised. You've got a consultant just for this. So the first wave is going to be windows, second glazing, and they've come back and there've been ongoing discussions about new products, because what's interesting is even since last year, when there's money to be made, that's when the commercial world really wakes up. So there's a lot of money to be made now, because obviously when you decarb property, if it was heritage, you always have to say, here's heritage, we can't do anything. Now we can't. So now there's a lot of stuff commercially. So yeah, we are, and I have to keep you informed as we go forward, because obviously these are ongoing discussions, and when we get the report. So yeah, but we are working on everything you said really there.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. No, that's good to hear on that, with the heritage builds, especially. Oh, my kids carrying on.
Yeah, carry on.
You mentioned, so on the roof replacements and the solar work that's going on there. I'm glad to hear that we are doing some solar work along with that. Completely understand that the cost analysis, and we have a finite pot of money at the end of the day. My worry is, and it travels across a number of the areas where we're working as well, is that it doesn't sound like we're necessarily doing a whole house approach on some of those, which I can understand from a cost perspective may not be practical. But when we're doing things like roof replacements, it seems like a missed opportunity to not do solar on every available property, frankly, when we're doing it. In the, granted, the cost of a roof replacement may be, around 18,000, which is a lot of money, but a solar install can often be 10 to 12,000 pounds at times for a house, but a huge chunk of that cost is on scaffolding a building. When you're replacing a roof, you've already scaffolded it. So what I'm saying is, if we're not doing that solar at the same time as replacements, at some point are we having to come back to those houses and do solar, at which point are we spending again on something that we could have done it with before? And equally, where you're saying about 3 beds or more, by the sounds of it, possibly looking at whether 3 beds is sufficient or whether 4 or more is.
Or we just look at maybe a gable end property with big thermal loss or something.
Yeah.
We'll look at the orientation, because it's all about payback with solar, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. What I'm wondering there ultimately is should, as I say, the finance side of it comes into it, but are we missing an opportunity potentially as well by not doing it on more at the same time, by let's say having to go back and double spend? And equally, if we're leaving those 1 and 2 beds and things like that, are we looking at who is living in those kind of properties in terms of, a 2-bed or a smaller property may have older tenants in, for example, which may benefit more from the reduced cost of energy costs and things too. And it's a really tough balance, and I completely understand the financial.
Yeah, it is. And I think, sorry, so obviously, as asset manager, I look at all investments, not just the greener. So the issue I've got is that ideally, yes, solar would be, and particularly the Marlin solar tiles, which lay flush. So in fact, you're saving money on the tiles, which we are installing at the moment with all our projects, and we were successful in the Green Homes Grant last couple of years ago. We installed solar panels, but when the money's gone, it's gone. As you know, it's been the same pound twice. So the benefits of giving solar panels to all tenants in Penn Hill. If you go to a tenant in Pinehurst and you literally, the question of, no, you're not getting a new roof because the money's been swallowed up here. Now, there would be a school of thought for this. Why don't we just take solar out completely? And that's what other people are raising. So I've got obviously the green agenda wanting solar panels, and every point you raised there, I can 100% agree, but I wouldn't challenge any of those points because particularly the way you said, when you do work, when you've got scaffolding, it's a sensible, logical thing to put in solar panels. But we have to make decisions. This is the problem. Decisions have to be made because our roofs are really old, our properties, but a lot of them are far beyond their life cycle. And there's no easy answer to that question. And that's why no decision have been made at all. What I have done is when I assumed this role, I retrospectively negotiated a variation on the contract for there to be a referral process. So it's not just geographically based on now we've done some work in Rawton, where before when I joined it was just like Penn Hill, we've been at Penn Hill for 5 years, which is great, but people outside Penn Hill can't wait for roof. So we are feeding in, but there's not a confirmed answer I can really give you on this, other than to say this is exactly the point why we've got this strategy. So the strategy which everyone will have a chance to part of everyone will have a chance to be part of this strategy until we agree where we go forward with our investment.
On the strategy side of it as well, on the slide titled Next Steps, one of the first slides, you mentioned obviously previous to that about the retrofit and net zero carbon strategy, great. The second paragraph on that Next Steps slide, though, then says also about and identify the need for a further dedicated strategy leads into thermal efficiency measures being introduced into our housing stock, and that sort of ties together with the, I guess, the later point you're making about whole house retrofit in places as well. But can you expand exactly on what you mean by it being a further strategy versus why is that not encompassed in the main retrofit strategy?
It's very, so I think here it was probably a slight editing issue where I wrote the initial report and it was transferred to a slide. So we've also identified the need for further dedicated strategies which lean into thermal efficiency measures, i.e. as a reference, so we're going to have a net zero strategy, which will come to all our stock. And we've got 2 other dedicated strategies, one for Rail Village and one for the high rise. Right. And they are going to obviously lean into thermal efficiency because obviously they are really poorly performing, particularly with the Railway Village, and also the high rise aren't great. So that's what I would really come in on that point there, that even though the net zero carbon will include the Railway Village and the high rise, obviously it's going to be packed, it's going to be unpicked a lot more and unpacked in a lot more fine detail with those 2 strategies about how we're going to, because the decom strategy may say what we need to do for the Railway Village. The Railway Village strategy say how we're going to do it.
Okay, thank you. And if I have my final question, the slide on gas boiler replacements. I'm glad to hear that we are upgrading, especially old, outdated systems. I'm slightly concerned that we're replacing gas boilers with gas boilers, if I'm honest, and that when we talk about retrofitting and thermal efficiency of properties and things as well, are we missing a bit of an opportunity here that we're locking these properties into another 10, 15, 20 years of gas boiler and therefore gas supply? And I would be concerned about how that gels with a net carbon zero strategy as a whole versus if I imagine some of these properties are the same properties that we're installing insulation measures at, or replacing roofs and insulating things. Should we be looking more at alternative fuel source heating systems rather than just a straight gas for gas replacement?
Yes. That is honestly the honest truth is yes, but we have to weigh it up with other factors. I'm inundated with tenants every day. I'm sure everyone around this table is, but constantly, I've been promised this, I need this, and heating is a huge concern. So where we have an issue where, say we've got a back boiler, an idle classic boiler, an old system boiler that's functioning at 50 to 60% efficiency, and I know we can put a new combination high efficiency condensing boiler operating at the high nitrogen efficiency, which will solve damp and mold in their property. It will reduce their fuel bills, and it will give them a much more pleasant thermal environment to live. Or we look at another step and we say, well, let's look for another heat source. So let's look at air source heat pumps, for instance. They are not really, as you probably know, but in industry, they're not a single measure install. You can never just put in an air source heat pump, because you can put both hands on an air source heat pump radiator for not get that sort of hot burning heat like a radiator. So
they run at a lower operating temperature.
yeah, and they're a lot bigger. They're a lot bigger. So you really have to have a whole house approach with, and again, it comes down to money. So where we are looking at, we have looked at this, and there's going to be a dedicated section within the strategy to look at this, because this is one thing we really haven't. Obviously, the new builds we've come into our stock with the future home standards have air source heat pumps, because obviously they can be encapsulated to a modern standard. But where we've got a lot of leakage in our properties, we would need to spend, if you think an EW1 past 2035 for one house costs £25,000, for instance, that would be on top of the air source heat pump. Now, I'm not sure we've all been to houses who've got air source heat pumps. I've been to some that have air source heat pumps removed because of, they are fantastic and they are going to be the future, or certainly they lead into the future. But I've not been convinced that they're a single measure install.
So there's a certain newer school of thinking in the market that I take your point entirely that a very leaky old property with a EPC rating of an F or something like that isn't appropriate for a single measure install of a heat pump. But there's a growing thought within the industry of how effective they actually are in a much wider selection of houses than previously thought. And to say that, I take the point that they will be most efficient. If you've got an A-rated property, you've done all the EWI and all that side of things as well, then yes, that's the going to reduce the bills by the greatest amount, but that also has that added on from capital costs at the end of the day. But I think my point ultimately is that there are a number of houses in our stock, and ultimately with those gas boiler replacements, are we doing any sort of retrofit assessment of those houses as a first step to look at what those are? Because in my view, ultimately, what we should be doing with all of our housing stock, all 10,000 or whatever it is of them, is that step one should be a retrofit assessment of the property to identify what every measure is on a wish list effectively in places, but to make sure that we're not doing measures that we, in 5 years' time, if we're coming back and do another round of upgrades and things, that we're not saying, oh, we wish we hadn't done a gas boiler there or whatever here, because we've locked ourselves in a bit. Whereas if we've got that assessment and we know those properties that can and can't benefit from heat pump now versus that we've done the measures, and therefore maybe we do put a gas boiler in now until we can do other measures. That's. I
completely see. But just on that point, I mean, again, I thought it comes down to, sorry for going into this in detail, everyone, but this is quite a salient point here. Ideally, you would have a past 2035 retrofit assessment of every property. 10,000 properties, how much does a retrofit assessment cost? It's 3 figures. Plus has go to retrofit design coordinator, it's another 3 figures. That is a huge spend. When I tell tenants every day they can't have something, which is my job to them every single day, and they're just having to spend this money. So I completely agree with your point, and we need to pilot these measures. So when we take out a combi and put in a heat pump, that's going to be an issue. But when we remove storage heaters and put in a heat pump, that's going to be a win-win, I think. So you are right, we should be concentrating on areas that have got non-quantum storage heaters, for instance. And it's something that this strategy will be unpicking, and something that we are probably behind the curve of where we should be with this.
Yes, it's a fair point, and I take your point that again, cost-wise, a full past 2035 retrofit assessment with a designer and everything, again on 10,000 properties, makes it cost prohibitive. But there's a middle ground, I think, still to be had in the past 2035 assessment is the gold standard. The bottom rung is your EPC certificate, because they're frankly fairly worth the paper they're written on these days. But there are middle grounds for assessments that can be done, and I'm pleased to see that we're using in-house resource on a lot of this as well. And I wonder if, whether we can find that middle ground, and whether we can look at what some other councils do with finding that middle ground as well to how we
I
do
totally
this.
agree. It's the one area we really are behind the curve on, because obviously, it's a lot of times it's the most that we care about, because at least the tenants care about, because if they're not getting something, the tenant having an efficient home to waterway doesn't give them a tangible benefit. And this decisions we've got to make, but we need to catch up, because we don't want legislation to form our hand. We want to be the Swindon standard, we need to be ahead of anything. But I completely agree, all your points I agree with every single of your points. And I think hopefully this decom strategy will be a roadmap of where we want to be as our council stock, because we should be really proud of our council stock.
Yeah, I agree.
That is where we are gonna be. It's just we do have to make decisions, and some of those decisions are day to day, and tenants they can't have something, and that is not a great position to be in.
Yeah, no, that's right. I'm really pleased to see that the strategy is coming forward as a whole, and would love to speak with you more in the future.
No, I am sorry.
Well, we have more than my fair share of time now. So thank you.
I apologise, everyone. That's my area as well. Yeah.
Councillor Butch, you can take any further questions offline.
Yeah, that's fine.
Councillor Manro.
Right, thank you. I think my question will be very easy. How have you selected these properties to say these will be done and others won't be done? There are 10,000 properties, and you're doing, say, like windows and door renewals. You're doing 700 per year over 3 years at 2,100. We got 10,000 properties. Are the other 8,000 properties fine, or what's the matter? Solar panels. Yeah, I had a resident ring me and said, my neighbor's getting solar panels, I'm not getting. Then when I checked with the housing, they said, well, they've got electric heating, so we put solar panels there. But this property's got gas heating, so they're not getting solar panels. So that's, the tenants are asking those questions, so we need to be able to give those answers.
And yeah, this is my inbox. I finished up questions and then I'll be presenting the answers to. So the last point, I applied and won funding for the Green Homes Grant on the council 2 years ago, and that's where I made a decision to go with solar panels on those, because this is when the electrical heating was, the electrical cost of electricity, was going really high. So that's why we put those on tenants' properties with electric heating, and some feedback on that has been fantastic. Although, as you know, pretty point you want to be on some point, we don't put batteries when we put solar panels. So it is, and the idea is with the electrical vehicle industry raising up, we are hoping that, like computers, they will become half as cheap and twice as better every year. So we really don't, I don't want to say we're going to spend £5 million on batteries and then 2 years time they're half as much. So we're trying to make a decision on those. But for all your points, it's every component replaced, be it bathroom, kitchen, roof, windows, heating. There's always going to be a slightly different type of data metrics we use. So for windows, firstly, for all of them, we have a stock condition survey, our first ever true stock condition survey, where so far we've done about 60% of our properties, and we've done 570 of approximately 650 of our blocks. So for the first time, we've got true data. This is something I was very pro when I moved this position. It did take a lot to try and push forward this. We have got that data. So that is one of our data. But for the windows, for instance, we have some properties that have inner rooms, i.e. you're in a room and there is no access to an escape corridor. So they've got inner rooms. So for those properties, we had to fit escape windows. And then I further looked at properties we had the top hung windows. Now there's stories where they aren't legally required, but there's stories where there's been fires in properties, you know, not in Swindon, and the tenant had a top hung window and couldn't escape from the first floor. So we're speaking to the fire brigade and the fire safety manager. That was also a informing factor that informed our decision. So we have to stop data compliance of a decent condition and age, and also have separate factors for windows. It would be the fire safety manager and regulations. And for roofs was a slightly different one, because roofs, it had already been, before I assumed this role, where they had already started in Pen Hill, and tenants were aware they were getting the roofs and the work was going ahead, and I didn't think where we seem to have made a slight skill by letting tenants down a lot of times. I thought, why not just don't let any tenant down and keep going forward with Pen Hill? But I retrofitted I retrospectively added a referral element with the contractor, so we could fit in other areas when they've come up to have done areas in. And we've just moved from American Pine into the bungalows in Rawton, I believe. So there isn't a straight answer. There isn't, well, this is what a tenant, this is what a property has to be, and this is why it gets a renewal. It's a very moving data set, really.
So we have surveyed all the housing stock, say 10,000
About
properties.
about 60% as of today, and about 90% of our blocks. And the only I could find on record was in 2016, and the council done a 10% survey, which they then cloned for 100%, which is great for working out a very draft budget, but in reality it tells you nothing. I can't find any historic data where we've ever done a stock condition survey before. I'm not saying we haven't, I just can't find any that we have done other than the 10%. So we are.
I think we need to convince the tenants whose house is not being upgraded to say why we're doing those 2,000 properties and not doing.
Exactly. And
I think that's the problem we will face.
Oh, I face it every day. I face it every single day, and it's horrible because.
Thank you. No,
It's,
that's all.
yeah, it's important. I want to say yes for everyone, but what I've come into is when it's no, it's a no with a date.
Yeah.
So you will give them, I will try to give them a quarter in a future contract year to say, by this quarter, this is when it will be. And I've done 3 this afternoon before I left to come here. And before it was you're not on the programme, or the famous line, when the programme benefits your area, you'll get a renewal. That can be 20 years. So now we're going to do, and then the asset management strategy, which I worked with Andrew on, we've got something called hotspots, where before we don't just broadly say everyone in Penrill's getting this, everyone in Pinus is getting this. We identify little hotspots in areas, so it could be like a street within a geographic area that needs a new roof. So we are, so the tenants mostly get the renewal. We aren't just applying it to a whole area-wide renewal, which is going to take some getting used to. But I think that's where data tells us we should go with our investment.
No, I think.
Councillor Chandler, I think, and then Councillor me.
Thank you.
Inefficient windows.
Thank you for the report. On the net zero strategy that you mentioned, what timeline are you currently working towards?
I'll hand you off to the Director of Housing.
We're aiming to have that available this calendar year. I can't, I'm afraid, give you anything closer.
Okay, so maybe a slightly more strategic question then to the 2 cabinet members. Is the borough still committed to 2030 for net zero across its estates and services?
We'll do what we can, but with reference to the housing strategy, as I think Lucas has quite clearly outlined, there are significant challenges. There's a huge amount of investment that needs to go into the housing stock. And lots of fairly urgent issues that need to be sorted. So I think, this is all within the context of that prioritisation. We've committed a huge amount of investment into the housing stock in general. But we are making up for a lot of investment long term.
Yeah, no doubt there's some good work in it. I wouldn't want to come across as the cynic here, but housing is a service that the council provides. If you stop the man on the street, they would certainly identify it that way. I'm just concerned there's quite a degree now of watering down of language with regard to net zero. Some of us are original members of this committee, it was founded as a net zero committee. Greener, reducing emissions, climate stability, they've all come up this evening instead of net zero, and I'm just keen we don't move away from that target necessarily. That was 2030 for the borough's operations, 2050 for the whole town. So yeah, just a general bit of feedback there. I think it's great work you're doing. When we talk about stuff, 5-year horizon, 6-year horizon, we're getting very close to that 2030 date.
Can I just say that a lot of, if you've read the asset management plan, that the 5 years with what we're hoping to achieve within the 5 years is a heck of a lot towards that 2030. It's not a small feat that we're going towards. And up until this has been put together and it's been properly managed and it's been properly looked at and it's going to have a proper strategic set of data and a proper way of going forward with roads and places where people are not promised and never delivered, which has been happening previously. This is where, when it's put together and the road or whatever is identified, that will be delivered to those people. And we are in this position because we're in this position because of the underinvestment. And I don't think that should be said too lightly, or it can't be said strongly enough. If it had been invested in over the past years, then we would easily reach 2030. We are trying to catch up on a lot of underinvestment, and that is not down to us, and we're not watering anything down.
So just clarity then, housing as a service will be net zero by 2030.
We are aiming to get to where we can get to by 2030. We will have the railway village hopefully done, we'll have the high-rise flats done, and we'll have the stock done as best as we can. Hopefully it will be at net zero. I'm not going to say 100%, but we will be getting a lot further there than we would have done previously.
Thank you, Councillor.
Councillor Min.
Thank you. So my understanding in terms of certain programs, for example, kitchen, that the kitchen programs were reviewed every 20 years. And what I can hear now is that is no longer the case. So in my particular ward, in certain houses have been promised, 2 years ago that the kitchen is up for renewal. So I'm just wondering, how do you prioritize certain programs, and are the ward councillors informed as program?
Yeah, no, again, that's a great question. And so the age metric has always dominated the industry when it comes to replacement, which in my view is completely incorrect, because every element is assigned a life cycle. So you have the bathroom 30 years, kitchen 20 years, central heating 15 years, windows 40 years. That's the wrong way to view it, because that's saying if a kitchen's 19 years, you're not getting a new kitchen, which is, and if a kitchen is 25, and we've replaced some kitchens at 25 years, but they're brilliant because we've got our in-house team has done them up, and essentially over the years they've had a new floor, they've had new counters, they've had new cave, they've had new everything. Because the life cycle's not restarted, it's been ripped down. So we are now going forward with the decent home standard is going to be an informing factor, but not the standard, because the decent home standard is actually really poor. And by the time this strategy is ended, it will be completely rewritten. For instance, you could have a kitchen that's 100 years old, that's completely failed, and it will pass decent home standard. That is why in the asset management strategy, it said we're only spending 2.5 million for decent home standard. Decent home standard is not worth anything. And I think before that has guided our decisions where we go. So Councillor Howard has now wanted to, we want to publicise a lot more where we're going to go. So yes, management strategy, we're still in the very early stages, and Councillor Howard through Andrew has asked me to produce a timetable, so every property will know when they're going to get every element in what year. That is our aim, and it's not going to be going from here to getting there. It's going to be a series of challenges. And because I was a surveyor at the council, and I've seen several hundred tenants, maybe 1,000 tenants, who've got letters promising them of work that never happened. So it would be better for us of not to do anything and promise what we can't deliver. So we're only going to promise what we can deliver and get to a point where every address has a date. So I hope it's answered your question. I can't give you a full answer because we're not quite there yet, but it is not just age, and it's really important that age is an informing factor, but not the informing factor for what gets a renewal. Thank you.
Well, yes, thank you. So that clearly tells me that those people who were promised 2 years ago, although they are still chasing me in certain way, I mean, I'm telling them, look, your house is going to be prioritized. That's what I've been told. That is no longer the case. So what do I tell those people?
So, I mean, I think it's better for this, maybe we send information to the council half and then on to me, so I can look at those active addresses. So I have got a list of every promise that we've not met. So I can see if you're on that list, and I've got a phased kitchen renewal program showing what we want to do this year, what we want to do next year, what we want to do next year. But in reality, we only do 250 kitchens a year, say, at the moment, and I say it's got 1,500 to 2,000 that I know has got to be renewed. So before you add me to the list, we're already 5 years, and this is the kind of decisions that we now have to make prioritising. So there will be people that's promised stuff that has not, that we will be able to go through with, but it will never be just a no, it will be why. But if there's any particular addresses that we want to take offline, I'm happy to look at them, what's been promised and where they are in the programme. I'm hoping, because I went out of my way and they've got a signed letter from me, when I found an old contract of kitchens that was not delivered. In fact, the kitchen was pulled mid-programme. A lot of the tenants had been surveyed. A lot of the tenants had taken days of work to get the kitchen surveyed. So, and I wrote to them all with my own name, my mobile phone, my contact details on there. So hopefully it's one of those, if not a couple of spreadsheets with the lists on to inform our future programme. But there's promises made, and then there's real world data to say what we've got to be. It's weighing up, where just because you promise a tenant, yet we've got another tenant in the worst condition that needs it. What is the right thing to do here? So there is no, there is still going to be tenants that are going to be unhappy. It's just justifying the decision we made, unfortunately.
Thank you, Councillor Milner-Barron.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, just thank you. Just following up on the 2 points. So the boilers, well, it is a shame that we've got to put in boilers. I think it's a shame we've got a contract for 5 years to put in boilers, because, you know, we don't know what our financial situation is going to be, or what the cost of other forms of heating is going to be, like years 4 and 5. So I mean, that seems a pity that we're committed to boilers.
So the main reason is because we had a high number of ideal classic boilers, which are literally failing.
Right.
So they will be replaced anyway by the repairs team. Or worse, which I actually saw, was, sorry, we can't fix your boiler. That was the end of the conversation with the tenant at one point, where the tenant was left without a boiler. So these boilers would have been replaced at a much higher cost because you wouldn't get the economies of scale. So the decision was made that we have to replace them. I think we've got, even on this gas heating programme, if it hits all our targets, we will just replace all our ideal classic boilers.
Yeah.
And that's the issue. So you just can't get the parts. They're great boilers,
yeah,
but they're very inefficient. They're workhorses, but they are well beyond their life cycle. Parts are totally obsolete. Unfortunately, this was a difficult decision we made, because you are right. By the end of this 5-year contract, we would spend the 8 million, and we would have a net zero strategy, say, well, in fact, now we need to move off here. But what we couldn't do is nothing.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Okay. Just talking about the boilers, if we're putting in boilers, this is my situation. So I've got solar panels.
Yep.
And I've got a combi boiler.
Yep.
So I haven't got a hot water tank.
Yeah.
So I can't get free hot water from my solar panels.
Yeah.
So what sort of boilers are we putting in?
It really depends. I mean, we're putting there's system boilers, obviously, with a hot water tank.
They have a hot water tank.
Yes, system
That's
boilers.
good.
So there's system boilers, and there is condensing system boilers, and also we are doing condensing combination boilers.
Right.
I mean, it all depends on the size of the house. Like in a flat, in a small house, you have a combi boiler, essentially, you know, instant hot water with a heat exchange. So it does the hot water and the central heating. And then you have a system boiler, or what people would call a traditional boiler, for instance, where you have a hot water tank.
Okay. So some of them won't have a hot water.
Not combi boilers, no.
So I mean, that's a shame, because obviously if you've got solar panels, people might put in solar panels in future.
Yeah.
And then they can't heat the water.
Yes, that is where, but obviously, you know, there's a electric is used throughout the property, so obviously it would pay for other electric being used. I mean, when we fit the Green Homes grant, I actually went around to a number of properties, and when the sun was out, they were using no electric.
Yeah.
It was all coming from there, which is great, but we don't publicise, because my job is never to look at the good news stories. I never speak to anyone happy purposely, because that's the wrong way to be an asset manager. You only speak to unhappy people who've not got good service, because then you really don't reflect what you need to do. But yeah, we're fitting 2 boilers, combi and system boilers, depending on the size of the house and what was there before. Is it something we would want to do? No. Is it something we have to do because they were getting replaced week on week, and it's taking the labour force away from repairing them, so they're actually becoming, you know, as if installers really.
Yeah, I obviously I see that. The other thing was about the high-rise flat, well, they're kind of mid-rise, really, not very, anyway, the high-rise flats. So London Borough of Enfield, they've put in ground source heat pumps.
Yeah.
Now they did that, they've been in there for about 8 years now, I think. It's a long time. So I was just wondering if you've been to have a look and check
I
out.
haven't been there with other councils. I noticed it raised about district heating. And I did have a really good guy who worked for me who decided, him and his husband decided to emigrate to Australia, which is really annoying. And he wouldn't commute back every day. So, and he was a energy and innovation lead, and ground source heat pump with district heating work for his thing. He's done cost analysis and on other areas. So it's not something I've visited the council in London, and the high rise strategy will pick up where we go with there, because what we've got on those high rise, I mean, they're technically high rise under the Building Safety Act. They're technically, even though I know you've had in London, they're tiny. But I think it's 80 metres, 11 stories.
Okay.
We've got individual boilers in those flats. Now, really, in a modern block, and a lot of them sit on big parcels of land, which would be perfect for a district, you know, heat network, ground source.
Absolutely.
But that's why there's another dedicated strategy for those, because we've done a skeleton strategy, so I could get some costings for the 5-year cost plan to make sure we've got funds available for all eventualities. But the strategy for high rise will unpick all this, but yes, it is something we did look into, and it's not something I can really unpick anymore. Yes, we looked into there was a cost analysis, and for me, it would be an easy decision to make. It was a simple yes or no for me. Okay. So one little last tiny thing is, like, when you're doing the kitchens, that would seem to be a good time to do internal wall insulation if it needs doing. I mean, is that something that you? Yeah. So I mean, under past 2030 fighting this council here, a lot of times when you do external wall insulation, you have to do internal wall insulation to hit the past 2035 framework. But in reality, the only time we'd be doing internal wall insulation would probably be the railway village. Now, a lot of those kitchens in railway village, even though they're listed, they actually sit on cavity wall later single-story additions, so they would need internal wall insulation in the kitchen areas.
So they're okay, yeah.
I mean, I would never say they're okay in a railway village. I would say they exist as a factual statement. But I don't want to say they are. But what I'm saying is we could insulate those kitchens in the railway village with cavity wall insulation. And I think the internal insulation for the railway village, because when you look at the railway village, they're terraced, which is obviously great, but the windows and doors take up a high percentage of the facade. So really, on my cost plan I put together, that's why we have quite a good detailed cost plan in the asset management cost plan, was I priced on the gable end properties, because that's a huge thermal loss. And that's really, we should have internal wall insulation, I think, on the gable end properties there, at absolute minimum.
Right, yes. Okay, that's all really interesting. Thank you very much.
Councillor Gardner, sorry, you've been waiting a while.
Well, thank you. I had a question regarding the solar panels. So great to hear that obviously there's an awful lot being put into doing it wherever possible, and obviously your 3 bedrooms plus commenting around kind of assessment of that. But the additional cost and the I guess, the offsetting of the initial revenue that can be raised from. I wanted to understand from the way I understand council's buildings rules. So in Highworth, we have a community centre, so that it's an ex-primary school, plastered with solar panels. None of that is energy that goes back in to offset the energy costs for the community centre. With the housing stock, does it from day one immediately benefit the resident, or is there an element of that that actually goes towards paying off the additional cost of the panels before the resident benefits? Thus, we can then do more roofs, or is there a balanced approach? I guess
it's a very good question. So I did go to other people's advice in this a couple of years ago when I looked at, because coming from the private sector, I wasn't quite sure how we talk with public funds and put in a element into a property which would be classed as a micro generator, and they all signed up as MCS, so they're all dedicated micro generation schemes. So I looked at what the advice I received was there's no cost of tenant at all for solar panels. They immediately, the second they let those panels, they get the benefit of the panel. Any excess goes back into the grid, and the view was that the council would benefit from the excess. Now, annoyingly, it's a very, very difficult process to sign up, to the point where it's still ongoing now, to the point where I've had to use my own driving license and passport to send to the DLOs of all the tenants we've published in, because back then they would not accept the council as the landlord. By the looks of it, that has recently changed. So I really hope they haven't got my details on file. So we are still going through the process, but the simply answer to your question is the guidance at the time when we done it and we signed up on the micro generation scheme was benefit gets the benefit, any excess benefit, then the council gets it. Which is, I think, quite sensible, because what a lot of the other councils have fell down this roof to rent scheme, which is just absolute con and a nightmare. We completely own the panels, they are assets, and there's no, even when you get through the grant, there is no added cost at any time. We're not leasing, we're not paying, we're not renting, we're not doing anything like that. So yeah, to answer your question, tenant gets the benefit, and the excess that they're not using, the plan is for the council to recoup it, reinvest, but that is still ongoing.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. But, yeah, it sounds like ongoing effort where we could potentially raise more revenue once it's set up correctly, and would benefit more roofs being renewed.
Yeah,
so,
and that is the part of the, when we looked at part of the net present value calculation on that was to show you exactly that initial outlay on everything is high, but kitchens don't give you money back, solar panels do. So that does play into it, but it is not something we've confirmed yet, and that's what a dedicated strategy will be picking this up. Like something that is very much up in the air at the moment.
It sounds fair though.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any other members? I've got a couple of relatively short questions myself. It's been really been really good to hear the commitment that the officers and the administration have towards improving our housing stock, and there's clearly a huge amount that needs to be done. Obviously, when we hear fitting double glazing, in my mind, I'm thinking, why are we doing double glazing? We should be thinking triple glazing. But you have to share out a limited budget amongst as many properties as you can, and there's only so far you can go.
We did go with AAA,
yeah,
double glazing, so we went best come at that cost analysis again.
Yes. One of the things that I wonder is that, I mean, I suspect if we looked at our housing stock, there's quite a lot of properties which are similar in construction. So maybe there's broadly 50 key house types in terms of construction.
About 28, yeah.
Yeah, 28. Yeah, not far out.
No, most people, yeah.
And I just wondered, would it help tenants to actually have some kind of decision flow where they understand the reasoning behind what they get and what they don't get? So if you're in this category, then you'll be prioritised maybe for external wall insulation. If you're in this category, then the priority, so that they understand the path that we're trying to work to, and that may reduce the questions and the aspirations. I mean, I suspect that the vast majority of our tenants, and we want to do, I know the administration wants to do absolutely the very best we can for them, and they would love to all have solar panels, all free. But the reality is you've only got a certain budget and you've got roofs to do. So I just wondered if there was some way of just simplifying what we're going to prioritise in terms of the type of property, so they can see I'm in a non-standard construction, probably a concrete built property. What is likely to be available, and what's the priority for it?
Yeah, I mean, in a dream world, yes, ideally you would want that, and it's really working towards. I think one of the commitments in the Green and Swindon plan, I can't remember, I think it's one of the quarters this year, it was to have an EWI costed design for every single one of our system builds and how feasible they are, because even though they'll need them, because every system build is so different, and even within a system build, there might be 5 different variations. Not the cost to put on one system build may be 60 grand, cost them on another maybe 20 grand, because one has to be self-supporting because the structure itself and the side isn't strong enough to anchor the bolts in. So once we have that, again, the end game is just like the point raised earlier when people are going to get kitchens and bathrooms. The end game is every tenant will have the information freely available. They live in this property. This is what's going to happen when they're going to happen. Are we there? Are we there yet? No. Are we beginning the journey to get there? Yeah. But and also we have to be very, so almost an elephant in the room is that we don't want the legislation to overtake us. Because if I ask you now, what is the minimum EPC has to be for social housing, by what year? I would get 10 different answers, even by people in the industry. Because it's changed over the last 6 months, and what an EPC is going to change. In the private sector now, what makes the EPC? So you are right, we don't be caught in a thing where we promise something, the regulation comes up and says, oh, we've got to put our money to this now for the legal requirement because these system builds are poor and now EPCs have changed. So yeah, we want to get there. We're not there yet, and we are a long way from there. But you are totally right. That is really where you want to get, where tenants don't have to chase information and it's already there.
And one of the issues sometimes is we obviously can't do everything to every single property in one go. It's a program, but I just wonder if in some cases we can't take some examples of particular types of these system built properties and use them as almost like a case study, so that we can actually pilot what we're doing and actually get data in terms of measuring what we've been able to achieve through what we've done to them. Now, I know that might mean certain properties and the people who actually are residing in them get a lot more than maybe somebody else who's having to wait, but at least we can see what we're able to achieve with it. And I have to say, by the time I add up numbers for roof, wall insulation, new kitchen, new bathroom, new central heating, and so on and so forth, it's almost like knock it down and start again. But the trouble is that a lot of these properties are actually quite spacious, and you would not be able to build the same property in terms of that space, and that's the balancing factor.
Yeah, just on that point, so essentially what we discussed earlier, past 2035, a whole house approach. It's not a single element, so we do with EWI as a fabric first measure, and then we install the other, which is what at the start Councillor Howard mentioned about 114 properties in Park South, but the cost of that is that's not 6 million for 114 properties. It's also what we are doing, planning to do another project. Hopefully it's going to start Q3 this year, another small project, but piloting is going to be key. And that is a commitment in the Swindon plan, exactly what you said there, to do pilots so we know exactly what we need to do to what properties, and that will result in some tenants in an area getting a better type of property. But you cannot get better information, real world information, so we will be piloting this. And that is going to be one of the primary commitments to do a proof of concept, really, where we spend millions on work we're not entirely sure what the outcome's going to be.
Thank you very much. So, do you want to ask something?
I'll have to leave.
All right, no problem.
Sorry, I've talked too long, sorry. I know.
So I don't know whether Councillor Houghton wanted to say anything additional, but I think we've had an absolutely incredible insight into the problems that we're actually having to address, and there's a huge amount to be done because there's, you know, it's a catch-up process, and it probably always is when you've got a lot of housing of whatever type, but we've got some particular challenges with some of the house types that we're dealing with.
Yeah, I mean, because of the different types of houses as well, it's not as straightforward as just going, we've got this type of house and that's how we deal with it. As Luke said, we've got 28 different types. They were all built at different times because of the war situation, the London overspill, and so different builders had to go here. It's a bit like now we see different, you know, builders putting up different sorts of houses in sort of 70, 80 years time, you'll find the same thing. Oh, that's a Taylor Wimpey, that's a Barron, and they all construct slightly differently. But for me, the most important thing with the asset management plan was getting it together to actually put money against it in order to put a strategy together that when we say we will deliver, we deliver. Because as Luke said, we've given people all this hope over years of you're going to get a new kitchen or you're going to get this, and then it's just never happened. I mean, I've been on housing roadshows where I said, oh, you're going to get this, and they went, yeah, you promised us that 7 years ago. And I went, oh, well, I thought I was bringing you something new. So it's saying, it's being honest with people, it's being transparent, and it's giving, you know, when we tell people we're going to do something, we're actually going to do it. We don't give false hope out there, which is what's happened in the past, and people felt let down. And it's vitally important that people's houses are given the correct things. This is where the hot spotting comes in that Luke's been talking about, and that they get the best performing houses that they can, because you know, we all know that heated bills don't come down, they always go up, and they always go up in the winter. They're going to come down, they come down in the summer and go back up in the winter. So we need to have the best efficient houses for tenants that we can possibly have. So yeah, so we've been working very hard in the background on this, and it's something that I discovered when we came in, and so with Andrew and with Luke and other people, we've been working really hard to put this together, and there's still a bit more work to do on it to put the sort of flesh on the bones. So hopefully you'll see some more results very soon.
I think we'd all like to thank the housing team for the effort that they're putting in. It's clearly an incredible task that you've got ahead, and you know, we'll hopefully see results coming through over the years.
Yeah, and one last thing, this is not about making a single right. Once that's what this is not about making a single right decision to either approve this budget or what, you know, hasn't approved or improve that management strategy. This is now about making the correct decisions every day for the next 5 years at minimum. And that is where we are, really. It's a series of right decisions now. I think that's how important it is. It's not going to be simple, but it is feasible.
I can coin one of Luke's phrases. Our housing stock is in a condition that we've ignored it for so long that we've gone down the road. We're now in the cul-de-sac and there's nowhere else to go.
Yeah.
But make it right.
I can leave that on, yeah.
Thank you very much. With that, Councillor. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.
So leave the meeting, so you.
Oh, sorry, I got disconnected. Oh, I have connected. I've disconnected, so can I leave it now?
You have to leave the Teams meeting.
Yeah, and I've also disconnected on the internet. I'm not sure how it's still on there. to rejoin the internet to disconnect. Sorry.
No, because he's trying to say he needs to leave.
Let me just, I'm going to have to rejoin the internet to leave the meeting. Sorry. Waste more of your time.
No
Sorry.
worries, no worries.
I think it may have frozen because that's not my screen on there now.
I'll try and join. So let me just hang on. I think one.
Oh, it's gone.
Ah,
It's gone, you're leaving now. It's just a little bit of a time lag. You're gone.
Okay.
Problem solved. Thank you very much.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye now. Thank you. Enjoy catch up again at some point.
Okay, thank you.
Right, so moving on, item 7 is the outcomes from the Let's Talk Swindon events, which is pages 77 to 80. I don't know. I think we had, is it Edward Jones?
It is.
Yes, hi Edward. Would you like to join us? Edward is strategically for sustainability and climate change, and he's going to come to the table and introduce the report. Thank you. And sorry to have kept you, but
no, it's all right. It's all relevant. Yeah, good evening, everybody. As I quickly introduce myself. Good evening, everybody. I'll quickly introduce myself because I think I've only really met Councillor Bush on one occasion. My name is Edward Jones. I joined Swindon Borough Council at the start of the year, 6th of January, as the strategic lead for sustainability and climate change. I authored this response to one of the previous questions with input from multiple members across the council. I can really only speak directly on the Solar Together part, which is the bit that I'm directly involved in. But I can attempt to answer any questions that you've got regarding the report. It's as is written.
Councillor Butcher. Oh,
Sorry, I thought Councillor Mulberry. On the mentioned in your report, the council's created a net zero working group comprising heads and levels of staff.
Yes.
What sort of relationship is that working group going to have with this committee and the working groups that we have here and we're working together on those initiatives?
Yeah, so this is a work group that I've been asked to create and I'll be chairing and leading it. So I presented it to CMT a couple of weeks ago, asking them for their support and what we're trying to do. The working group is there to try and ensure that decarbonisation factors are considered across director level. We will not have any mandate within ourselves in the working group. We'll be there purely to come up with ways to influence and to encourage change. The ambition is for us to work up ideas sort of in a formal, informal way, if you will. But between ourselves, we're hoping to keep it around about 10 people. And from there, we will create formal papers, which will either go to our directors if they don't need your oversight, or they will go into Councillor Bush's portfolio or to this meeting if appropriate.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Mulberry.
I just wanted to have a little mini rant, really. Paragraph 323, a new initiative at the HWRC enables residents to recycle plastic and metal coffee pods. So these plastic and metal coffee pods, a new kind of litter, kind of invented in, I don't know, 5 years ago. When did they start?
Probably 10.
And nobody needs these things, and they're almost impossible to recycle. People have got to drive to Cheney Manor to some special unit to dump the things in. It's just totally ridiculous. That's all I want to say, really. It's just kind of, they just made all this work, all this money, and a proper extended producer responsibility scheme would have made them non-economic to make in the first place. That's all.
I agree. I would encourage anyone who does have a pod maker to buy a reusable metal pod to buy their own coffee beans.
Or just grind the bean together.
Yeah.
Yes, to what extent, obviously the Let's Talk Swindon events have tended to be a listening medium. To what extent do you see us actually going back and trying to encourage residents to actually take into account environmental factors and sustainability in terms of what they do, like buying pods or whatever the situation might be, because there's lots of examples of that. And I think a lot of people want to help, but sometimes don't know how. And even down to, you know, what they put in their various waste streams. I think probably in there, some people possibly don't use those waste streams in quite the way that we would like them to.
So that's a pretty big question. What I will say is that one of the best strategies that the council should be deploying is on behavioural changes. Not only are they free for us for the most part, or very limited compared to other strategies, but that's a way to get direct engagement with the community, both all of us here as well. And I think for me, in my role, one of my issues is on that I don't want net zero to be a burden on the local community and what we're trying to do. It shouldn't be causing people too many challenges on what we're doing. Like, there is a reality that we need to shift over to net zero to become decarbonised, and that needs to be understood. But we need to do it as a community and as a way that doesn't put the onus on those who are potentially struggling. You know, another reality at the moment is that net zero technology is significantly more expensive upfront than traditional fossil fuel methods, because the level of capacity to build isn't there as of yet. You know, take electric vehicles as a prime example, much cheaper running costs, but more expensive than the equivalent price vehicle. So when we're talking about what we're doing with the community, it's going to be a lot of engagement. So I've got the Labour quite a lot. We'll see the Director of Communications on what we're doing. We are going to be pushing for another round of Solar Together within the community to try and get more people involved in solar panels. I have spoken to Councillor Bushell and others very, very briefly on what we can do about plastic recycling and trying to get encouragement and engagement both internally and externally. But I think it's a case of we just have to continually make sure that we've got the right level of engagement. One thing that I think is quite exciting is Lisa Afferty, who's here at the council, one of the directors, is going to and myself and Emma and Lee Heaton are looking at a number of ways we can get young people involved. I think if we get young people involved with the decarbonisation strategy, they will then message their parents, they will get them involved, and it can be a much more efficient way of us getting shift over through that engagement. So that was a long round question, basically saying that we're going to talk a lot.
Yeah, but I certainly think if we can catch people young, they will probably educate their parents. You know, Dad, what do you put that in that bin for? It's, you know, and they will educate. So I think certainly a direction that we need to go in. Any other questions from councillors? Thank you very much for coming along. I'm sure we will see you again, and we look forward to it. So thank you very much. Sorry to get you so late. Item 8 is just really to establish any progress from current working groups. So if any of the leads from the working groups have any verbal updates they'd like to give, this is the time. But I'm not aware that we've got anything additional. Do we, Councillor Gardner?
No, and other than I will put an effort to make a working group meeting convened soon, so that we can bring the item back to the table.
Are you the developer?
Procurement.
Yeah. Okay, so thank you.
I think I've got to return the same answer.
Yeah. Not a problem. I think we've made some progress, but I think we probably need to, in some areas, continue that path. Item 9 is the work programme for 2024-25, which is pages 81 to 90. So really, just inviting members to consider their work programme report and the appendices and make any suggestions. I've got one which I would like to put to us to include, which is to ask for a short report on the operational and financial benefits that have been derived from the installation of the lithium batteries at Waterside. Because I think we've got some infrastructure, and I'd be very interested to see to what use we've been able to put it and what benefits we've derived. Because obviously, if we need to invest further in that area, we need to have some record of what we've been able to achieve. So, councillors, happy to add that to our work programme? Sure. Councillor Munro.
Yes, I'm happy with that. But what I would like to know, on 8th of May, we've got to review the progress on the existing EV program. We secured some grants last year to put in EV chargers on street. I think we should have a report on that, where we are with that. Are we putting any in, or?
I've put in a request, and I don't think they're quite ready, but we're pressing for it because I think we'd like to see some progress. It's one of the things that is quite important to actually see that progress.
Yep.
Oh, sorry, Ed.
Yeah, I'll answer that question. So we just had someone join on a temporary basis. So you're referencing the Levi Fund, which was just under £2 million that we were given, where we're allowed to put public charges on public highways. Yeah. So what we're trying to do is identify where the best locations for that are, because normally that's not in location within Swindon. That's not really places where people are going to be owning electric cars. So that's the challenge that we're bumping up against. Someone new has joined Swindon on a temporary basis. It's called Ian. It's escaping me at the moment, but he has delivered the fund a couple of other locations. So we're hoping to get a bit more movement than we have had recently. But that's just there. There will be a report soon, basically.
That's really helpful. Thank you, Ed. Okay, so we'll hopefully make progress on that very soon. Are there any other items that for the work programme that we'd like to look at? Okay, so if we're happy to, if we're happy to accept the request for the lithium batteries, we'll note that and record that. And I think apart from that, we just need to note this item on the agenda. Item 10 is status of request for action and or information. So I'm not sure that we're actually waiting for anything, are we? I think we've received responses from cabinet members where necessary as we've gone along.
Great. I think the only one, Chair, that's outstanding is this future friendly course that was being piloted in Bath. And apparently, I think Mr. Ramford was going to be asked to come and present to us, but I don't know who was actually actioned to speak to him.
So can we add that to the work programme for future meeting?
Chair.
Yes, Councillor.
Sorry, if it's okay, can I suggest, sorry, Ed, that maybe it's something that we just take away and look into whether that's a useful thing for us to presume to council, and then we can either report back or send you an email. I think that's the most efficient way of dealing with it.
That would be helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so thank you everybody, and I think that concludes our agenda. So thank you for your time. It's been